You'll be familiar with the refreshed narrative for Scotland's curriculum, which focuses on three main sections. Scotland's approach, which outlines the continued importance of the four capacities and on us delivering the four capacities. What Matters, which focuses on the context for learning across the 3 to 18 learner journey. And the third section on how we do it. These Routes to Success webinars really focus in on that how part, sharing honest stories and practical examples of how schools are raising attainment and achievement for learners across the senior phase. The session is not necessarily about radical curriculum design. We know that curriculum design at its best is not necessarily about adding more and more courses. It can be about the marginal gains that can be made to benefit learners and to protect and safeguard their achievements. We're delighted to be joined today by Insight Professional Advisor Fiona Lawrence, who many of you will know and love, and we'll explore some fall across options with her, for example, moving from National 5 to an NPA at Level 5, where that might be appropriate. Last week, Kenny Riley, Head Teacher of Doon Academy in East Ayrshire, and Joanne Hesford, Head Teacher of St Macer Academy in Aberdeen City, and I think Joanne might be on this call, shared their curriculum story so far, and it was really well received. You'll see links on the screen now, and I'll also stick those in the chat shortly, but they're definitely worth a watch if you have time to spare to go and hear what they had to say. Today, we're delighted to be joined by Jamie Von Sharp, Deputy Head Teacher at Denny High School in Falkirk, Caroline Philp, who's Deputy Head Teacher at Newbattle in Midlothian. And on the 23rd of September, Pauline Anderson, who's Deputy Head at Galashiels Academy, will share the story of Galashiels as part of the Scottish Learning Festival. So if you're able to join us for that, I'll put a link in the chat for that later too. We really want to keep sharing the stories of the successes of curriculum design, but also of the bumps in the road, because they're really important too. So if you're keen, or if you know someone who you think actually has a really good story to tell, please do get in touch. Our contact details are on the screen, and I'll also stick them in the chat later on. So without any further from me, I'm going to ask Jamie if he would take us through the Denny story so far.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Now, hopefully I'm not going to have to go full Jonathan Van Tam and have someone advance my slides for me, but hopefully this will open up in a second or two. My name is Jamie Von Sharp. I am a Deputy Head Teacher at Denny High School in Falkirk, and I have been the Raising Attainment Deputy now for 3 years. So my intention today is really to talk you through the journey that we've progressed so far with Denny. This is very much a work in progress. It's certainly not we've done it all and look at us. It's very much more of the process of how we have progressed and the things that we've done. A lot of it is down to our close working relationship with the Insight team, both with Lewis and laterally with Fiona, and their advice and help and guidance in terms of us being a better data-led school and making more informed decisions has been extremely helpful for us. So I'm hoping to kind of take no more than 10 minutes. Certainly I have a face for radio, not for television, so I will be getting through this as quickly as possible. But of course, I'm happy to follow up if anyone would like to discuss anything further later on this evening, or indeed over the next few days. So for context, Denny High is a school of just under 1,400 now. Like many schools, we have benefited from a large increase in housing in our area. When I joined the school, it was about 1,250. It's now at 1,400, and it's scheduled to grow up to about 1,600. So it's a large high school. The SIMD profile for the school is shown at the bottom of the slide, which is indicative of SIMD 1 to 10. There is still work there to be done. I think it's quite apparent there when you look at our SIMD graphs. There's still work there to be done, and as I said, this is very much the story of where we are so far. We have a staff of 110 FTE currently. It is a rural and urban catchment area. It does pull from a number of towns and small villages in central Scotland, but also has a number of young people who come from quite rural backgrounds. And just as I suppose a shorthand, our PEF budget for this year is 124,000, which gives you, I suppose, a small flavour for what Denny's like. For those of you who might be aware of Denny in the past, Denny has very much been on a journey. I think 10 to 15 years ago, Denny High School was, to quote a colleague 3 or 4 years ago, a tough shift. Denny still has its challenges, but it's certainly not the school it used to be. So the background for our attainment, when I became the attainment deputy in February of 2019, we undertook quite an extensive analysis of what attainment was like. Now, the attainment process that we discovered through analysis of lots of data, both from Insight and from Authority, was that our presentation policy was extremely limited. The numbers there are indicative of a school of, as I said, about 1,250 at the time, 656 higher entries and 1,179 National 5 entries. That was the lowest in the Authority for higher presentations, and bear in mind we are the second largest school in Falkirk Council, so our presentation was far too low. And this really was partly due to the thing that I think lots of schools do, which is we told ourselves a story. And the story we told ourselves was that the reason why our higher classes were so small was because we offered a very diverse curriculum in terms of options for young people to do. And we did offer, and we do offer, a large number of courses to our pupils. But that became a bit of a narrative where people were effectively lulled into a false sense of security that we had small numbers doing hires in each class, but that the totality of that was actually not a concern. The reality when we got into the data was that it was a significant concern, and our presentation policy was far too restrictive. We had a policy at the time when only you could progress into a higher if you had an A or a B at National 5, which of course we know goes against SQA guidance in the documentation, and also, to be fair to the young people, actually actively discourage young people from taking hires in lots of subjects. We also had a situation where pupils in Denny were sitting on average 3 National 5s in S4 compared to the national average of 4 at the time. So our policy was far too negative, and it was driven primarily for 2 reasons, I think. One was the protection of the no awards, and Lewis, when he came out and did one of his first Insights sessions with us, was very clear about that the no awards had to come up, and that really did change the head teacher's mind at the time as to our presentation policy, because up to that point we had been quite protective of ensuring that we had very small, if any, no awards. It was also driven by a presentation policy which was a high dropout rate. So there was a culture, and there continues to be a culture. This is a culture shift conversation. There was there was a culture of a high dropout rate driven by PTs in terms of protecting their no awards, but also by families and pupils. And we spent a lot of time in the months of February, March, April and May with the extended leadership team really drilling into the data, what the data was telling us, and the best way forward. So although 2019 was a low point for us in terms of our attainment picture, the discussions had started in February. So when we launched again in August, we had a much better, much more positive presentation policy, which was actually much more supportive of our pupils. But as you can see in the table at the bottom, the pass rates for 1 at 6, 3 at 6 and 5 at 6 in our S5 in 2019 was extremely poor and needed to come up substantially. And that's what we've set about doing over the last wee while. Now, it did lead to very challenging conversations at times. We did have to have some very frank and honest conversations around the ELT table, extended leadership team, table there. And I think that was helped by a good relationships within the school, but it didn't necessarily make those conversations any easier. But what we really found was that with the data supplied to us from Insight and from the Authority, it made those conversations better because it challenged the story that people were telling. And that really really helped us move things significantly. The next move then was in terms of how do we pull all that together. So following on from the lengthy discussions with our PT team and the extended leadership team, we had a revised presentation policy aimed primarily at raising attainment by having more pupils sitting subjects. Now, what that was driven by was, of course, the data that we had, but also challenged the perceptions by families and by pupils about the ability to drop subjects. So we would often have discussions with pupils saying, well, I'm going to take 4 subjects or 5 subjects this year, but I'm going to drop 1 in October, and then I'm going to drop 1 in February. And we were very clear with pupils from the outset and with staff and with families that we needed to ensure that if they were starting the courses, that we had absolute faith in that they were having to finish the course, and that we were accepting of the no awards. When we had a validated self-evaluation from Falkirk Council that came in the October of 2019, one of their comments was that the presentation policy was going in the right direction, but we needed to make sure that we were following it through, and at times, to quote the informal discussion we had, that we needed to hold some people's hands through that to reassure them, and we did that. We also spent a lot of time with our families. So for the first time, we had quite an extensive family engagement process for our senior pupils about ensuring success, and we really hammered the presentation policy. We brought them into the school back in the time when you could have families in schools. We had them in the school. We had significant evenings with them and spent a lot of time holding on to that policy. And it became a bit dogmatic, but it actually meant that when we stayed the course towards the end of 2019 and into 2020, that we were on track to have very, very good results. The other part we also did was we spent a lot of time having got the new presentation policy, and we then also used Donnie, and I think Donnie's here today from the SCQF team, working with him and again with the extension of the SCQF catalogue to look at what alternative courses there were on offer. There's no doubt that for a period of time we have been offering a doctor's curriculum. We have been offering a very standardised traditional curriculum, particularly higher up the school, and we spent a lot of time trying to unpick what that really means, and that was done alongside the SCQF, but it also involved the SDS, the market projections that we're looking at in terms of where the jobs are going in our local area, and where our young people are moving on to in their destinations. So there's an awful lot of data that was driven into those conversations, but it was all done in a way which I think staff bought into, which was that the reality was that it was driven for the right results for the pupils, and in the actual fact they had full support from SLT, and that was a significant benefit for staff and for families to hear those key messages. So our current context just now is that we currently have, of our 7 faculties, 5 of them are running new courses, mostly at level 4 or 5. Many of them are skills for work. Some are at level 6 now, and before the pandemic hit, we were due to have more courses that were to come online, so we have more to come. But currently we're offering, for example, early education and childcare, we're offering sport and rec, we're looking at a bakery course just now that's going to come into health and wellbeing, and we also have level 6 literacy and communication as an alternative pathway to make sure our young people are maximising the most when they're in school. We've spent a lot of time, I know that when Elizabeth and I spoke previously about this presentation and about gaining accreditation, that I think Fiona's going to talk about later on, about gaining accreditation, leaving a National 5, but leaving with a Level 5 qualification is something else. We've still a lot of work to do in that direction, but what we have spent a lot of time doing is making sure our course choice pathways and destinations are right. So we have spent an awful lot of time investing in hours and manpower about getting our course choice right at the beginning of S2, which is when the narrowing of the curriculum begins to come in. So, or rather, personalising of the curriculum comes in. So we have spent an awful lot of time making sure the young people are in the right courses. And that now exists within a culture where they have to stay with these courses to the end, whereas before there was a culture whereby you need to choose something for a small amount of time. So we spent a lot of time talking about course choice and pathways and destinations. Subject teams now all have laid out pathways for all their subjects at all their levels so that young people can track them through, and that's shared with families through our course choice booklet. So you can see if you choose, for example, S3 art and design, where those different pathways go. You can take higher photography, you can take creative digital media, it can take you into college. We have a greater expectation of pupils and staff to gain accreditation. There is no doubt that we have continued to have quite robust conversations with staff and PTs around about the accreditation and where the pupils are going. Our dropout rates are lower, primarily because we monitor that much more rigorously. We have a very close eye on our dropout rates throughout the course of the year. And we had a culture where in May it became a bit of a race to the bottom in terms of people dropping subjects as quickly as possible before they sat their exams. That doesn't happen now because we've really hammered them. And our presentation numbers have gone up. So we are now at 1379 for level 5 and 911 for level 6. And that means effectively that as a school, our attainment has gone up. And I fully understand, of course, there's the 2 sets of results of 2020 and 2021, but we know for a fact that our grade neutral tariff within Insight indicates that our presentation gap has been closed, and that's been a really powerful tool for us to help express and explain the progress we've made. This isn't, I think, as some newspapers perhaps like us to believe, that pupils were just given results. Our grade neutral tariff is indicative of our presentation gap having been closed, and in some cases, which is lovely to see, overtaken against our VC, which is fantastic. And the net result of that is that attainment in S4, S5 and S6 has increased, but there is still some work to do. We still have to roll out more skills for work courses. There are still ones slated to take place which were then put in abatement because of the pandemic, so those ones are still to come out. We still need to make better alignment of courses to career paths. So although in some cases, for example, early education and childcare, where there are a lot of career paths available in the local area, we have not, for example, nailed things like hair and beauty, and we haven't managed to do very much around about engineering. And those are two big areas that our young people want to move into, but we're trying to move into those courses. And again, if you have any expertise in that, I'd be delighted to hear from you. We've also spent more time capturing our evidence of our at-risk pupils in terms of gaining accreditation when we can, when our risk pupils are. Our 5 at 3 level this year was much poorer than what it should have been against our local neighbourhood schools, and therefore that's something we need to work on. We have a very good school partnership link with our college, Forth Valley College in Falkirk, but we still need to make more use of some of the courses, particularly our foundation apprenticeships. Larbert High School just down the road have made great strides in that, and we would like to mirror that because there's still some areas for growth in terms of getting young people into the right career paths. And the final one is about maintaining the culture of our presentation policy within the school. This is a cultural shift, and as we all know, culture doesn't change overnight or just because I've written a paper that everyone suddenly reads it and abides by it. It is very much a culture whereby we have to stay on it. And so far, we have good buy-in from families, from pupils and from staff, and that culture has been seen as the right culture to move the school forward, which is really good. And being able to stand up in August of this year and talk about the 3-year journey that we've been on and the quite clear attainment trajectory that the school is on, I think allows us to continue to build that culture and keep staff on board.
Thanks very much, Jamie. I'm sure everybody in the call will agree that that was really useful. I love that idea of the kind of building the culture around your presentation policy with your families and with your staff, etc. I think that's really great. And just want to pick up on a point that you made just there about, that kind of reciprocal sharing. So if there are people out there who are doing something really interesting in terms of alignment to career paths and using local labour market information, please, that would be a really good way for schools to be joined up. I think Andy and I are kind of calling ourselves the Cilla Black now of the curriculum innovation team of trying to pair schools together. So if that's of interest to you, then please do get in touch. Thanks very much, Jamie. I know that on top of your day job, that's quite a huge undertaking to have delivered that tonight, so we'd really appreciate that. I'm going to go straight on to Caroline because I know that it's not a particularly long session that we've got. So Caroline, if you're good to go, thank you.
Yeah, hi everybody. That was really interesting listening to Jamie because our story is very similar in that the sort of length of our journey and the time scale that we have been on with that. It is very, very similar. So I'll try and just make it a little bit, add in a few different things so I'm not repeating myself. Is that okay? Can everybody see the slide?
Yeah, Caroline. Yeah,
perfect.
Thank you.
So just again to give you a little bit of context, with New Battle, for those of you who aren't aware of it, we're based in Midlothian. I'm one of the deputy head teachers in the school. I oversee the curriculum and SQA and timetabling, and we have been developing our curriculum for the last few years. It's still, like I think any school would say, it's never at a stop point. It's always continuous, and every year we're making changes to it. So it's very much a continuing journey. Context of our school, majority, over 3/4 of the school sits in the lower 7 deciles. We have just over 1/3 of our learners with additional support needs, and our free school meal entitlement is above the national average. We were very, very fortunate that a few years ago now, we moved into our new school building. And when we went into the new school building, we actually did a lot of work before it, because we launched our new vision, which was really to encourage all of our students to stay on at school. And that was really around our curriculum, because we felt prior to moving into the new building that the pathways weren't there for all of our learners. Kind of similar to Denny in terms of the offerings, particularly higher up the senior school. So we wanted to look at those pathways, look at our curriculum offerings, and ensure that our students left career ready, college ready, university ready. A lot of our students traditionally would go straight into employment rather than going to college or university. So it was trying to really look at, there's nothing wrong with going into employment, but if you are, you know, what employment are you going into? Is there progression? Are we opening up those pathways for them? So we did a consultation with all stakeholders the year before we moved to school, and we redeveloped our curriculum map. I know it's quite small there, so I'm happy to share anything with anybody if you would like to discuss it or have a closer look at it. I've put it in from the BG there because we changed our school day. We were sitting at 28 periods a week. We changed this to 33. Within the BGE, the major changes that we introduced were we have now got a period of digital literacy every week for all S1s, 2s and 3s, and they are achieving a qualification at the end of S3 in that. And we've also introduced, it's every Wednesday afternoon, electives and master classes for all S2s and S3s. So they come together. They pick an elective or a master class, and the idea behind that was to start getting that idea of a pathway for them to follow, something they're interested in the start of their pathway. In terms of the senior phase, they pick 6 subjects, but in S5 and S6, the 6th subject is a little bit different. We've got wider achievement awards that the students work towards, but they also get the opportunity to do work-based learning. They do YAS courses, and that opening of that column has actually made a big difference to our attainment in the last year, and that's something I'll show you when we look at the impact. The reason for us changing our curriculum, we felt we weren't meeting the needs of our learners, a bit like Denny was saying as well. We've actually moved to having free choice. We were very restricted by columns, and that was something that came up year after year. Students having to pick subjects from columns, it wasn't working for them. And that came through in the consultation as well. So that was kind of our reason to try and support our learners. So in the senior phase, there's a lot more flexibility in the choices. We, in the last year, have worked with Donny and his team as well. And we've now got a bronze accreditation for the CQF Ambassadors Programme. And what that has resulted in is every one of our faculties have learner pathways with the courses mapped out from the BGE through to the senior phase. And that was really useful because we did have some faculties who were very much on board, and we're very quick to get the course offerings in and look at those pathways. But that programme supported faculties that maybe weren't as confident, just with looking at how to access those courses and open up those pathways. The wider achievement awards that we offer in S5 and S6, all students are going to, well, they are sitting PC Passport, Leadership, Wellbeing Awards, Mental Health Awards, and from there it's all to enhance their CVs, but we feel that it's important skills depending on what they're wanting to move on to that are of value. We've opened up our partnership working as well. We, prior to COVID, did have a lot of students going out to the workplace, maybe 2 afternoons a week. We had students who, through those opportunities, were walking into apprenticeships, which were fantastic. But unfortunately, due to COVID, that hasn't happened as well over the last year. But we're certainly looking at our partnerships and getting them back up and running as soon as we can. We're very lucky that we've got foundation apprenticeships that run within Midlothian Council, but also Edinburgh College. We've got good partnerships with Edinburgh College as well, who deliver a college course for hair and beauty within our school, as well as students going out on afternoons to college. Being a community campus, we've got our sport and leisure team who are based within our school, and they've supported with delivering emergency first aid at work for 6 years last year. And we've also got the YAS courses run through the Open University as well. In terms of new courses that have been offered over the last couple of years, and this list seems to be growing every year, which is fantastic. But it's again, you know, it's fantastic to see it's opened up more opportunities. The students are engaging in them, they're enjoying them. But sort of marginal wins that we have noticed with a lot of these courses is that well, some are managing to double bank qualifications. So a good example, there's a travel and tourism with customer services. They're getting 2 qualifications through the one subject choice. Other gains that we've seen is, particularly if I take science as an example, previously a lot of students would maybe do their National 4, they would then start the National 5 and find it quite difficult, and that's when we would, again, like other schools I've mentioned, have that high dropout rate, and that was what was really hammering our attainment. When I first started in this role a few years ago, and I was monitoring the number of level changes or students want to drop subjects, it was significantly high. So what we now do is, if students are not coping in a subject, they look for a sideways move. So if they're doing Nat 5, is there another level 5 they could move to? But now we're finding that these pathways are developing. Now it's the students are being coursed into the correct subject. So rather than going from National 4 biology into National 5, if that's too much of a jump, they're potentially moving and doing level 5 in health sector. So it's just ensuring that the students are on that right pathway and it's meeting their needs, and they're not settling for another lower level course. They're managing to achieve the higher level. So we found that really, really useful, and we're getting more level 6 qualifications on board as well. So that's been a real positive. I've put a couple of examples of learner journeys just to show how it starts from the BGE and runs through into the senior phase and beyond school. So we've got an engineering elective that runs for S2s and S3s on a Wednesday afternoon. That's delivered in partnership with Edinburgh College. And then from there, you've got the different subjects that can be selected in S4, 5 and 6, including foundation apprenticeships out with school, and then after school, the different opportunities where that can lead from. And another one I've just put up, we've got an engineering one, but we've also got our digital one there as well. There's various different digital electives. We've also got our BGE digital literacy course. And again, there's been a lot of development in this area for our school, and the offering for those subjects such as cybersecurity, games design, data science, and they've been well received. Particularly the games design has been a popular one this year for students, and just again looking at how those pathways can develop. In terms of our impact, we were very aware that we are still chasing that virtual comparator, and we're all very eager to wait and see what this year's going to bring. But we are, since we've changed our curriculum, we have seen an increase in positive trend over the last 3 years. The wider achievement and the SCQF courses have made a big difference as well. And I've put a little just table in there from some of our results from this year for S5 and S6, just to show the difference from the graded courses to all SCQF. And you can see there that it has made a significant difference for us. And I've put the 2020 VC in there just to show how it's bringing us more online with that. But other than attainment, something that we have noticed is, the nurturing side of our school is something that's very important to us. We've got really good relationships with students, and we want to encourage them to stay on. But what we have found is that is happening. We've got an increase in the number of students staying on to the end of S6. And I do think that is a result of them having the support and the care, but also having the right appropriate courses for them to follow. We've noticed a reduction in our exclusions. We've also noticed an improvement in attendance. So all of these factors are very important to us as well at New Battle. It's definitely not the end of our journey. We've worked very closely with Lewis and the Insight team, and we've also been out to other schools visiting, and I suppose that's where we've managed to get a lot of these ideas and suggestions. So if anybody does want to get in touch, I'm more than happy to support, but equally we're still looking for how we can make little gains and changes as well to help this improvement journey. So thanks.
Thanks very much, Caroline. That was great. And again, just to say, I know on top of the day job, it's a huge undertaking, so really appreciate you doing that. And having been up to New Battle before the pandemic, it's really clear the young people talk so well about the experiences across the senior phase, so it's obviously working really well for you. Thank you. Fiona, can I just pass straight over to you, please?
Absolutely. Hopefully my tech won't let me down, although it has a number of times today, so if it does, please forgive me. So I am hoping that on the screen just now you should be able to see the Insight presentation. Fantastic.
Can see it.
So I shall just make a start then. I'm Fiona Lawrence and I'm currently an Insight advisor, and along with Lewis Patterson we form the Insight advisor team for the Scottish Government. Real privilege of our jobs is working with the fantastic school leadership teams like those at Denny and New Battle, who we've heard from this week, and Doon and St Marca from last week, and of course many of you here, because I recognise lots of names, but all around Scotland, and being able to share successes from different schools to work to promote collaboration. In the 10 minutes today, I'm going to use Insight to show you how a school's curriculum offer can impact upon attainment. However, and this is really important, this isn't about making graphs look good. This is about getting it right for the learners. If we support young people to maximise their attainment, then the impact on school data will follow. Liberton High School in Edinburgh widened their curriculum offer a few years ago, moving away from the traditional subject offer to one that blends academic and vocational options. And I'm very grateful to Stephen Kelly, the head teacher, for allowing me to share some of the impact this has had with you today. Stephen and his team widened the curriculum to better support learners to engage in meaningful programmes of study and to have a corresponding improvement in attainment. To give a small flavour of what they did, on the screen is an extract of Liberton's course choice booklet, and it shows a variety of career choices, in this case highlighting what learners who wish a career in the creative industries may wish to study, and routes to take through the senior phase and beyond. Note that Nationals, NPAs and Skills for Work courses sit side by side, and note the way in which progression pathways are available from S4 and into S5 and all the way beyond school. There's a second example, this time for careers in engineering. I think there may be a theme there with what we've heard from New Battle, but there are many more on the school website. And Liberton have allowed me to highlight the effect this widening of the curriculum, alongside, of course, the work they've done on the broad general education, expectations, pedagogy, learning and teaching, everything that underpins it. But allow me to highlight the effect this widening has had on their Insight graphs. So here we have a snapshot of the school's S4 attainment from Insight. I think it's probably true, and I echo what Jamie said earlier, that traditional routes have often served the most able pupils well. This move to widen the curriculum, increase opportunities for success, has had an effect on the attainment of the middle 60%, the typical secondary school pupil. And without wishing to get too much into stereotypes, this critical mass is often where the battle to improve attainment in a school is lost or won. So we can see on the screen the attainment bars for this middle 60% of S4, with the orange bars for the school in 2016 being some way behind the virtual comparator, the silver bars, the authority, which is in blue, and Scotland, which is in red. But we see the orange bar for attainment for the school rising from 2017 to 2020. What is shown is a rise in the average attainment in the best 5 subjects per pupil in the middle 60% over 4 years. And that rise is about 50 points. So this represents either grade-related improvement, so for each pupil about 5 extra bands in 2020 compared to 2017, or each pupil in 1 or 2 subjects doing that at level 5 rather than at level 4. So I want to unpick that a wee bit more to get a clearer understanding of whether the improvement is grade related or level related or a mixture of both. So to do this, I've used the grade neutral button, and this splits the tariff points into, well, if you like, I suppose, points for achieving a level and grade add-on points. Because remember, national courses award grades, whereas NPAs are generally pass or fail. When we look at the trend for 2017 to 2020, the white part of the attainment bar has risen each year. And this shows that the blend of level 4 and level 5 courses the pupils have undertaken has changed. In 2020, the white bar is higher. Pupils are doing a more ambitious curriculum, more level 5s and fewer level 4 courses. However, at the same time, the grade add-on, the size of the orange portion of the bar, has also risen. Liberton found that widening the curriculum made a real difference to pupils. It increased both the achievement of levels and improved performance in existing courses. And this increased success and self-esteem opens up more opportunity to succeed in S5, and so feeds through to a rise in S5 attainment, which we can see here. More success at level 5 and S4 allows for more opportunity for level 6 success in S5, and those gaps on graphs are often more marked. And much more importantly, pupils have a greater choice of options in S5 if they've achieved level 5 and S4. So there's more for them to choose from. And 2 level 6 qualifications is the entry point to higher education to an HNC. The course, it's not just Liberton, New Battle and Denny. Every head teacher I've spoken to, and I've spoken to many of you here, is looking to maximise level 5 success in S4. Information on Insight shows that in S4, there's been a significant rise in non-national level 5 presentation across Scotland. It's gone up by over 4,500 presentations in 2 years. And that's increased the average presentation rate for S4 pupils at level 5 and above from 4.18 qualifications to 4.44. Feedback from schools around Scotland suggests widening the offer of level 5s that can be gained in S4 leads to improved learner confidence and engagement with a corresponding effect, knock-on effect for other subjects as well. And Carolyn talked about this at New Battle, assuming pathways are in place, more learners can then study at level 6 in S5 and S6, which may well have an impact both on staying on rates and destinations. But in September of an already busy year, what can we do now? Well, at Golspie, which is a school with single teacher departments, Mark Evans, the head teacher, has embarked on a similar journey. And so he's recently moved one of their very few principal teachers, Heather Shelley, into a raising attainment remit. And Heather started pragmatically, and she's had an initial focus on attainment in 2022. So she has used Insight to identify courses that are already being offered across other Highland schools. And she's allowed me to share her spreadsheet where she's looked at where the courses that are offered in neighbouring schools can slide into the school's existing provision to immediately support pupils. But all of this information is available to all users of Insight. So just to take you through that, and forgive me those of you who are very familiar with this, to do that, change your school to national establishment, that's the red arrow, to look at the whole country, or to your local authority to look at local schools. And then use the whole course summary and filters, and that's the orange arrows, to get information about, for example, National Progression Awards at level 5 in S4. And those are the blue arrows. And that gets information about which subjects are being done in significant numbers across your area or across Scotland. So I maybe just slipped that. No, I didn't slip a slide. Here are the details of the 1,354 S4 National Progression Awards at level 5 that were presented in 2020. But there are similar lists on Insight of level 3, level 4 and level 6 awards presented for S4 pupils. There's quite a variety. Some are far more widely done than others, with computer games development, business with IT and photography being the most popular a couple of years ago. And the 14 different skills for work courses with early learning and childcare, travel and tourism and lab science being done in the largest numbers. And it didn't surprise me to see all 3 of those courses being alluded to by our 2 previous presenters. And then, of course, the more than 4,500 other Level 5 awards done by S4 pupils in 2020. You can see there's a sort of a really broad range of subjects there that schools are doing in large numbers. But of course, Insight's not the only source of information for this. The SQA catalogue is vast, and there's information about progression pathways in many subjects. It is well worth getting in touch with Donny Wood at SCQF, and I think he's probably on this call. Experience tells me that he has proved an absolutely invaluable support to schools. Or it might be that one of your neighbouring schools is an SCQF ambassador school, and you can share experiences with them and collaborate to better meet the needs of the learners in the whole area. However, data makes much more sense in the local context. Our sessions with schools are designed to be supportive and challenging. We want to promote and provoke self-reflection. In last week's Routes to Success webinar, I was really delighted to hear the head teacher at Doon, Kenny, describe their Insight session as a real catalyst for change in the school. And we've heard Jamie describe how important the relationship with the Insight advisors has been to real improvement at Denny High School, and Carolyn echoed that as well. So I would encourage you to get in touch with the Insight advisors. Our contact details are on the screen, and we can provide a full range of options, including half an hour on Teams for a particular aspect of data, or we could take a much more in-depth look at how we would best use your data for improvement. Thank you very much for listening.
Brilliant, Fiona. Thank you so much as always. And just remember that this will be recorded, and we've got last week's session recorded. So if you want to watch that again and to pause bits to spend a bit more time looking at the information on the screen, then you'll be able to do that. And on that note, I'm going to pass over to Ollie, Ollie's Strategic Director at Education Scotland, and he's going to close the session tonight. Thanks, Ollie.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And I've got the really easy job, I guess, of closing the session tonight, because it's been a great session. And the thing that I love about all these sorts of sessions is just the amount of ideas that have been flowing. And I just think that's so important as we move forward. So I just really want to thank Jamie, Caroline and Fiona, but also just, I guess, reflect on a couple of things that the different presenters said that really kind of stood out for me, that really resonated for me, both as my time as a head teacher, but also when I'm having conversations with people out in schools. Elizabeth, you started off the session by talking about marginal gains and bumps in the roads. I don't think we think enough about marginal gains when it comes to curriculum design, and I think that we could all learn a lot from that. You also mentioned bumps in the road, and I think that Jamie, you kicked off your presentation perfectly by kind of saying that this is a work in progress. Like we're going to tell you about this, and we're going to tell you about the things that have worked well and also the mistakes. And I just really hope that we can start to develop a culture where we're sharing more of these mistakes, things that have worked well, the ability to ask each other for help, so that we can start to build, really imaginative curriculum structures across Scotland. I think, Jamie, you also sort of shared about you being a large school. You've got an expanding role. You've got a range of SMID between 1 and 10. And if you're on the call and if you're thinking to yourself, hey, we're a large school with over 1,000 pupils, and we've got a combination of urban and rural pupils, and if we've got SMID 1 to 10 as well, maybe you should be getting in contact with Jamie, whether you live in Shetland, the Western Isles, Fife, Edinburgh or Glasgow, because it's not just about the schools next door or in the Regional Improvement Collaborative. It's about how can we share this practice, across the whole of Scotland. And just coming back to marginal gains, I mean, I think the one thing that you did, which is a marginal gain that people don't often realise, is change your presentation policy. If young people aren't in the room, then they're not going to achieve. And it's amazing, actually, how much of an impact you can have on attainment just by helping young people either not drop out of courses, or that came across really strongly, that sideways move from a national 5 to a level 5, or from a higher to a level 6 qualification as well, and just being really strong on that and making sure that the curriculum design, supports that in so many different ways. I love the fact that you'd introduced a whole variety of different courses, Jamie. I think, again, you were talking a little bit about engineering and how you're wanting to develop that more, but you've got other courses that you've introduced really quite successfully, which link directly into the labour market. The obvious one being early education and childcare, an important skill set for young people overall, but also thinking about the expansion of childcare, in Scotland, and the opportunity for jobs in this area as well. And the other thing that I think that you were talking about that really resonated with me was this whole idea of it's a 3-year journey. And I think the one bit of advice that we've learned from the curriculum innovation team is that if you're going to change the curriculum, yes, you need to keep iterating on it and decide what's important for young people, but you've got to make that decision and then hold on to that for at least 3 to 4 years so that you can start to see those marginal gains, those bigger changes coming through, and the impact on young people as they stay within the senior phase, over the whole of the over the whole of the 3 years. And we see that again. And the other comment that really resonated for me, Jamie, was around you build your culture around your presentation policy, and that is of course how you take those reluctant members of staff with you, those parents with you, and of course those reluctant learners with you as well, that haven't always appreciated the range of options that are in the senior phase. Caroline, great presentation for you as well. It's just great to see how much progress you've made with the curriculum in New Battle, since moving into the new build. Again, I think we should be sort of saying here, think about the demographics of New Battle. If it sounds like similar to your demographics, get in contact, find out about what they've done, find out about how you might be able to steal some of those ideas, but turn those into how you turn those into areas of good practice. And again, you talked about different marginal gains. You were talking about making sure that you were almost unashamed about wanting young people to stay on. Again, if they're not in the room, they're not going to achieve. You talked about a suitable offer for young people based on their interests, but also employability options in the area, rather than this more traditional offer, which is highly centered normally at young people that just want to go on to university. And again, making sure that within that young people were either career ready, college ready, or university ready, and making sure that your pathways, allowed for young people to follow any of those paths, or indeed change their mind, during that journey as well. And again, I thought that was really, really strong. Love that you reflected on the BGE. Like we didn't have that last week because we've been focusing on the senior phase. Of course, the BGE is the route, into the senior phase qualifications. Electives and master classes, we're starting to see those grow in popularity across Scotland. They're really, really good for introducing curriculum flexibility, really, really, really good for trying to get some flexibility within staffing within your timetable. But of course, it's not just about nice things to do. I loved how you were reflecting on how you would use these to actually give young people a taste of what they might be taking part in the senior phase. For example, if a young person's not heard about rural schools before, if they can get a taste of that in S1 and S2, even if it's just for a few weeks, that might help with their options as they move up. And you could apply that to digital skills, to engineering, to the creative industries. And I think that you've really developed a really, really good program there. You talked about a free choice model. That will scare a lot of people on the call. But again, it's maybe worth having the conversation about that. What works well about that, what doesn't work well for that, again, to see whether that suits local needs. And then you talked a lot about what you did around wider achievement awards. And I think the important thing that we need to reflect on in terms of wider achievement awards is that these aren't just nice things to have. What wider achievement awards are really strong on, of course, is development of a range of holistic skills for children and young people. You talked about digital skills, as part of that, but also the wider skills in terms of creativity, in terms of sense making, in terms of communication, which are so popular within those MPAs. And of course, other types of things that we know that employers are asking for, as well as other types of qualifications as well. And it gives young people something to talk about when they get for an interview for a job, for college, or for university. And again, just sort of very, very finally around that as well is, again, talking about different pathways, and just that sort of strong reminder that it's not always about going forward. It's not always about getting harder. Sometimes it's okay to sidestep. And I was looking at your qualification maps that you put up there, and I can imagine that within New Battle that you've got some young people that, for example, are doing National 5 PE, and that jump to higher PE is maybe a little bit too much because of the literacy rates. But you've got a kind of pathway there where they could go to level 6 exercise and fitness leadership. And if you look at the totality of the senior phase, of course, what's happening there is they're developing the literacy skills and other subjects, which means you could go from a National 5 PE to a level 6 exercise and fitness leadership to a higher PE, at level 6, and you could progress from there again to college and university. So again, thinking about that totality of the curriculum was really, really good. And Fiona, just a few words about your presentation. It was an Insight Masterclass. It's always an Insight Masterclass. I actually noticed a few people that have got their web cameras on during the talk log on to Insight when you were talking, or I guess that's what they were doing, just to check, some of the data in terms of where they were with the qualifications. So that's the impact that you've already had, in those areas there. And I think that, if we sum up the two presentations that we had last week and the two presentations we've had today in terms of curriculum design and raising attainment, the strong messages is the curriculum drives attainment. There's unintended consequences from all of this, is that if you actually get the curriculum right, then actually attendance goes up, exclusion rates go down, and pupil well-being seems to be a lot higher. They're more satisfied with their learning. And other sort of common factors that we've got in this is that schools that have really embraced this have engaged with the SCQF framework, they've engaged with the Insight team, but most importantly, they're talking to other schools, they're stealing the best bits from other schools, they're taking that back to their own schools, they're having that discussion with teachers, parents, the wider community, and they're creating their own local recipe to kind of move forward as well, and then being really, really true to that 3-year journey. So I've taken like loads from this evening. I've thoroughly enjoyed both of these sessions that we've had. We would really welcome, both feedback on this session and more that we can be doing in this area around these sort of like 10, 15 minutes, little bits of input. And we would also really, really welcome schools that want to come forward and say, hey, we've been working on this for a year, or we've been working on this for 2 years, we've been working on this for 5 years. This is some of the things that we've learned, because I think that we could all benefit from all of these different stories, no matter where you are on your journey as well. So we'll just stick the evaluation form in the chat. We've got another one of these sessions next week as part of the Scottish Learning Festival with the SCQF, with Donnie from the SCQF. That will also be pre-recorded, and that will be 5 little case studies again that you can sort of dive into around curriculum design, particularly in the senior phase. But otherwise, that's all we've got to say for this evening. Thanks so much for hanging in and staying with us. Hopefully you'll have a chance to revisit the sessions from last week if you're interested in this, and maybe you can join us next week at the Scottish Learning Festival, either in real time or recorded as well. But please reach out if we can be of any more support.